Hello and welcome to Inside Music Curation. We're the team at Feed Media Group. We help businesses with music solutions. And today I have three of my esteemed colleagues from our music curation team, welcoming Claire, Armando, and Stens. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey there.
Today, we're going to be talking about fitness music strategy, and what a great topic for these guys to talk about, because that is what these guys are doing all of the time. If you're not familiar with Feed Media Group, we power music for some of the world's top fitness brands, as well as other companies, but fitness is really a sweet spot for us. And these guys have been selecting tracks and optimizing and working with fitness brands to find the right music for the right user at the right time, day in and day out. So today, as part of music curation, we're going to talk a little bit about strategy. And I think what first comes to mind when I think about music strategy is it really is more than curation. Curation is a big part of your music strategy. Curation is what music are you going to play. But before you get to that point, you have to think a little bit about your product, your content, the context that it's in, certainly your brand, and also how you're going to integrate it. We work with a lot of fitness apps. Some of them have connected devices. Some of them, are mostly used on mobile phones. But all of these are important pieces in a music strategy. And also, of course, the music that you're selecting. But I want to just kind of get back to basics. Whenever we talk about music strategy, whenever we talk about curation, it always comes back to the users. We take a very user-centric approach, making sure that we're picking the right music for your users. And for fitness companies, January usually means a spike in users. So it's a great time to take a step back, look at the music that you're using, look at your strategy, and find out how you can connect with more users. Stens, maybe you've been curating for fitness clients for a while now. Tell us a little bit about, the importance of music and how having the right music can really move the needle for these fitness companies.
Well, I mean, first of all, just for another piece of the big picture context is that we know that a lot of fitness companies right now are down in it with their acquisition planning, right? It's just, and a lot of our colleagues, it's even hard to get a hold of them right now because they're making their plans for acquisition. But I think a thing that we're having conversations right now with our partners is don't forget about retention. So, we know there's going to be a huge surge in January and February. There always is. I mean, we see the numbers in terms of the play starts and all the music volume and all of the workouts that we track. But then it always dips down and dies down in, March and April. We know that. And so I think we can get into the users and the context and all of those things, which are absolutely critical to music strategy. But right now, at this moment in time, don't forget about retention. And I think one of the headlines of this conversation is music is sticky. It's incredibly sticky. And we also have the data to show that. So the day 90 data that we have across all of our customers is 1.7 times greater retention for our fitness users, the end users that are playing Feed FM's music than those who don't. So 1.7 times, more likely to have retention with music. So it's super sticky. So, think about that great acquisition campaign, but, bake in your music as strongly as you possibly can, because that's going to be a fundamental sticking point when the customers, their New Year's aspirations start to fizzle a little bit. A lot of times that music can keep them coming back and keep them exercising, and it's going to directly, help your bottom line.
Just to break down that number a little bit too. So what that means is, of all of the apps where we're powering music, we can dive into the data and look at people who are using the Feed FM curated music that is integrated in the fitness app versus people that select no music or choose their own music. And like Sten said, 70% more retention after 90 days for the subset of people that are listening to this professionally curated, seamless integration into apps. It's keeping people around longer.
I think Armando is one of the people on our team that works most closely with our fitness customers. He's really on the front lines, really actively with the role that he plays. maybe Armando, could you talk a little bit about the importance of understanding the end users? And both here at Feed Media Group and in your prior work, which you've been in the fitness industry for a long time, how do you directly take the user information you're given? And then what are some other creative ways that you've seen companies, glean more information about their users that can help to set that target more clearly of what music they want to hear?
Sure, sure. Reaching out to our clients and having those deep, conversations about demographic, the type of workout, the formats, the modality, and the genres they want. Those are all important. But also, getting a full customer experience in a workout is very important. I've always been very hands-on when working with creating music and fitness, where I love to go out there and experience the workouts. I'll take the hit classes, the rowing, cycle, and that's a way for me to really understand the classes, the intensity, in this way. I also get to learn, about the instructor. Throughout doing this, I have my favorite instructors, and a lot of these instructors out there, they'll have a large, social media following. And, I'm following them just because, I'm part of that community now. I'm working out. I want to see what the instructors have in store, because I'm excited about diving in there. And these are great ways to really understand who they are. And they'll at times they'll throw in some music in there and kind of get a feel of what they're going to plan, and things like that. You know with that information, you can create dialogues about, community stations. You can create, a favorite instructor station, and this will help the dialogue between, your customers and everybody. Everybody loves talking about music and fitness. You can go on and on, and it's a great conversation starter. It's a great way for people in that fitness community to bond, and they're bonding with music and they're bonding with fitness. And, that's how they got me, with that same information, fitness and music. I love being there. You
I think
know,
you
yeah.
Oh,
And,
sorry. I
and,
think you bring up a really great point that like fitness is or music is exciting to talk about, right? So if, as you're looking at your music strategy or you're looking at your overall strategy for January, and looking at more ways to engage with your community, whether you're talking about an existing music plan that you have, or you're getting excited to announce something new that you're doing, or, to Armando's point, you're soliciting feedback and trying to gather information from them. All of those are great conversation starters with your community, with your audience, for sure.
Yeah, and I think we see a lot reflected in the communities in terms of, people are vocal about what they want to hear. And so I think, we like to encourage our partners to, poll their community and see, what stations they're really loving, get an idea of, new artists that they want to hear more of, who's really motivating to them. Maybe it's not just from like a musical energy standpoint, but also from like a philosophy standpoint, of who's really encouraging to them.
Yeah, lyrics are powerful, especially in a workout setting. I know we've found that in other studies that we've done. I just lost my question that was in my head that I was going to ask.
Okay. I mean,
You talked a little bit about like data and what other, you know, with the exception of going out to your community and asking, what do you want to hear more of? What other data do we use to, kind of optimize or understand what's resonating with our fitness clients?
well, not all of our customers have it, but the North Star that we use for those that functionally integrate skip rates or skip functionality is extremely helpful to us because, as a B to B to C, we don't have direct access to the end users or the demographics. So we work with what we're given, and then what we can intelligently infer from everything. We pay attention to social media, we pay attention to all their communications, but then a lot of times we also can kind of reverse engineer insights, like, they really don't like Billie Eilish or whatever, or she doesn't work for this station, or they love Justin Bieber, so I'm going to throw a lot more Justin Bieber at them. But those types of things are really, really helpful. And then I think for our customers that don't use skip functionality, which a lot of times you can't. If you're rowing, you're not going to skip. If you're, the Lululemon is a super important customer of ours, and it's not convenient to go up to the mirror display and touch it and stuff when you're working. So we get that. Then we just try to set that curatorial target much, much more clearly, like demographically, who are your end users, with as much precision and intelligence as we can, because there's going to be musical sweet spots. And, my sweet spot is going to be different than your sweet spot, Melissa, or yours, Armando. And that's a function of preference. But then a lot of times it's just a literal function of your gender and age. So understanding the gender and the age of our end users is super important, because we're all going to have periods of time, even we as professional curators, there's like periods of time when I hella know the 90s, you know what I mean? Or the early 2000s, because that was a stage of life. I didn't have a family and I was just all the time plugged in. But, everybody has those sweet spots of listening, and you want to, target those, because the familiarity of music that people know and love is something that's primarily, people want to hear music they know when they work out. And so we want to try to, understand what is that music that they know and love. And that's demographics combined with intelligently using the functionality that we have of skip rates.
Yeah. And I do think that's why
not to preempt what you were going to say, because you should say it, but I think the recent experience with Win Reality and curating for younger listeners is a great example, right? Of like what you can or cannot or should not use, right? It's really important.
Yeah. I think when we especially look at, a user base from like a connected device standpoint, as well as like a demographic standpoint, there's more investment required in big machines. And so we tend to see an older demographic associated with a lot of that work. And so like, you want to make sure you've got throwback stations, you've got classic rock. When Reality is a virtual reality platform, and is geared at, young aspiring baseball and softball players. And, they're going to be a little more, attuned to hearing new music in that way. So you get to really be like custom and bespoke with what the audience wants.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Like any opportunities, I think, again, when you look at the strategy, it's not just about picking this particular music for this particular workout, but giving your customers choices, whether they're able to skip or whether they're able to like or dislike, whether they're able to have a menu of stations, or if you're saying, hey, if you're doing this workout, this is what you're going to listen to. With technology and with integrations like Feed FM, it makes it much more easier to say, here you can choose. Do you want to listen to throwback? Do you want to listen to current hits? And we've definitely seen some increase in other genres creeping up. Pop is always top in fitness, which we've talked about on this show and in other content as well. But we're definitely seeing those other genres creep up as digital fitness grows, right? I mean, digital fitness is still a growing entity, and it's absorbing more demographics, and different people are logging in and taking workouts online. And so I think we're seeing some changes there too.
Yeah, I think, Armando, I'd love to hear a little bit from, you had an insight recently that we should pay attention to as curators. It was totally on point, because Melissa's saying more variety, more diversity, more options of stations. We've been seeing a huge uptick in the number of reggaeton stations and reggaeton music that people want to listen to while they work out, because it's penetrated kind of like mass awareness, mass enjoyment right now. Reggaeton is like really, really prominent. And so we're using more of that, which we love as curators. It's exciting for us, both in terms of the sheer diversity of what we're programming, but also because it's great music. But you recently, Armando, mentioned like, hey, we should keep an eye on Afropop. And
yeah, absolutely. we've seen the surge, in our first play product. We started to see a lot of reggaeton. So then many of our partners, clients were asking for reggaeton stations. Now I'm starting to see Afro beats, including in some of these stations, and slowly they're getting added. And like I mentioned, some of the instructors that I'm following on social media, I see them, playing some of these Afro beats stations as well and dancing to it. And so I see that, people are going to start, wanting these stations. So it's fun to see, what they request on the first place station side. And it's exciting, so, we like to be in the forefront, and make sure that, we get these stations out there and appeal to the instructors and to the clients.
Yeah, actually, Claire, we were talking recently about freshness and keeping the stations fresh, and how fundamentally important that is, right? Of like, this track might be great now, but then it's not going to be great. And I think, you've got your ear really low to the ground on listening to new artists and sharing out a lot of new up and coming artists. Do you have any tricks on how you work to keep your customer stations fresh? And like, we're ahead of the curve, right? We're trying to simultaneously serve up the popular known tracks that people know, but kind of lead them gently by the hand of, there's always going to be some fresh cuts in there. We want to be helping people discover the new great music before, they might hear it somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting balancing act. Like we sort of have mentioned, people do want familiarity, especially in pop stations. That kind of becomes like the nature of what you're turning to, of like, okay, this is, I know what I'm getting into with this. There's not going to be like too many things like out of left field here. But yeah, I find it's pretty, it's kind of like a slow trickle of like, okay, like here's something that's like new, can tell it's going to be big. Like maybe it's a collaboration of like a lesser known artist with somebody a little bit bigger. And you're like, okay, like this is going to get, start getting more radio play. And, the idea is for like, from a musical experience level, for that to sort of like, you'll sort of start subconsciously noticing it in other parts of your life of like, oh, you'd be like, oh, I heard that song in a TV show. And it's like, oh, now it's on the radio. And so like, there's all these other different areas in which like music gets integrated into our life. Fitness obviously being one of them as well. And so when all of those things can play together, there becomes this added like connection point and like the classic sort of like surprise and delight of music discovery, and being able to like, have the expectations of like, okay, this is a song I know, and like, oh, here's one I don't know, but it sounds kind of like this. So, it fits.
Keeping it fresh, really important. So I know we're talking about a lot of different themes when it comes to music strategy today. We've definitely talked about focusing on the user, knowing your audience, understanding your demographic, curating, selecting music, for that, and also adding some surprise and delight, adding some variety, whether it's, additional stations. They can be temporary stations. Try a reggaeton station for a month and see what kind of, response you get from your users. I love all of these ideas. And again, the feedback loops, right? Like when you think about your music strategy and you think about how you're going to integrate it and how you're going to get feedback from your customers about the music, some of that can be built in, some of it's more organic or happening on social, but lots of good opportunities to start these conversations and to get the data, because the data, really speaks to us. And again, these guys, professional curators, we couldn't do it without them. And you guys have so much context. You're following the charts, finding what's going on out there and looking at the data, seeing what people are skipping, seeing what's working and what's not, and helping to keep it fresh. You want to keep things coming back. So if you're doing your own music strategy, don't forget to freshen it up, or check us out and continue following along for more tips. Any other tips that you guys have as far as, keeping it interesting, or for someone maybe, that's doing their own fitness music, any other tips to get them off to a good start for the new year?
I think seasonality is important to pay attention to as well. Something we sort of like tangentially talked about, but just the idea of, I think it shows that you're paying attention to like what your user base is looking for, and sort of like having a view of like it's a really small way to make, like, to add freshness, but to just show that like you care about the experience that they're having with the music as well, and that like even though you've maybe outsourced it to curators, but that you know that that's an important part of valuing them as a user as well.
For me, music discovery, I've kind of been at the point where if I'm listening to new music and there's featured artists on there that I have no idea who they are, I'll go into their album and I'll go through, 2 or 3 songs and try to explore, new artists out there. And then it'll just kind of trickle into another album featuring others. So that's helped me out a lot when curating music and finding new tracks.
We talked about featured artists in dance music a couple shows ago. It's definitely a trend that's happening in music now, and a helpful trend if you're curating, because just like Armando said, it just opens up some rabbit holes to go down and explore and find new artists and new music. That's great.
I think, I completely agree with what my colleagues have shared. I think the last thing being that when you think about your fitness music strategy, that there's a big continuum of services that we provide to our customers, ranging from really small and really, simple solution to really complicated and with like multiple stations swapping in and out at certain key points in like a spin class or things of that nature. But both for us as curators and for you as the provider of fitness to your customers, it doesn't have to be complicated. So if you can just start with small, then choose pop that aligns with the demographic of your audience, right? Because pop is almost always top, and you can just go with like a pop station that's great for 25 to 35-year-old women. That's going to be way better than anything than having silence, right? We already know the stickiness factor. If you integrate the music into there, you're gonna have that much more stickiness when it comes into March, April, May, and your customers are losing their motivation, as we always do. It's gonna keep them coming back. But there's a whole variety between that to like, you've got 30 stations and you've got 3 flavors of hip hop, and you've got these yoga stations, then you've got these hit stations, wherever you are on your journey of music and your scope and size, just try to push it forward a little bit more, right? Like just try to thoughtfully push it forward a little bit more with the information you have about your users and the modalities that you offer. Like just keep like moving the goalposts for yourself, because it directly will provide you the ROI. You're going to see it directly in your retention. And if you need professional help with that, we're here. We have tons of experience and we absolutely love it. It is a privilege to be able to provide people with music they know and love, and it's life enhancing. It's part of their workout. So it is truly a privileged position to be in, of an intersect between this music that we're all passionate about and this fitness that we know each and every one of us should be doing more of.
I couldn't have said it better, Stens. Yeah, I mean, definitely. If you're interested in learning more about music for fitness, please check us out at feedmediagroup.com. You can follow along. We're here with Inside Music Curation every 2 weeks. You can also follow the blog at Feed FM, which has a lot of great tips around music for fitness and wellness. And yes, we'd love to keep the conversation going. So whether you're ready to go or just dipping your toe in the water, please reach out. We'd love to connect and talk more about music and fitness. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and good luck to everyone getting ready for the new year. Here we go, 2023, what's in store? Keep checking back. We'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk about our year in review, make some predictions for the year ahead, and have some more helpful tips around music curation. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.